Dominic Mercer believed his ex-wife had chosen to end their unborn child and disappear from his life forever. For 6 years, that belief turned love into hatred and grief into something cold enough to rule an entire city. Then, on the night he was supposed to marry another woman, a little boy ran through a cathedral filled with New Orleans' most powerful families, looked straight at him and cried, "Papa." The candles were still burning. The bride was still waiting. And Dominic suddenly realized the grave he had carried inside him might have always been empty. This is not only a story about a hidden child, it is about betrayal, stolen years, and whether love can survive after trust has been destroyed. Stay until the end to discover who created the lie and what Dominic is willing to sacrifice for the truth. Like the video and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. 3 days before that cathedral fell silent, a blue cardboard rocket struck Dominic Mercer in the chest. It happened inside Harbor House, a children's arts center tucked between a jazz club and an old brick warehouse near the French Quarter. The building smelled of wet paint paper glue and the faint sweetness of powdered sugar drifting from a bakery across the street. Children's drawings covered the walls, suns with purple faces, houses leaning sideways, families made from fingerprints and bright circles of paint. Dominic looked as though he belonged to none of it. He entered through the front doors in a charcoal suit followed by Mason Cole and 2 security men. Conversation softened around him. A mother pulled her daughter closer. A volunteer nearly dropped a tray of brushes. The director of Harbor House hurried forward with a smile that was too wide to be comfortable. "Mr. Mercer, we are honored to have you here." Dominic glanced at the new brass plaque mounted beside the studio doors. The Mercer Foundation, Children's Creative Wing. He had approved the donation months earlier without reading the final proposal. Mason had told him the center served children from neighborhoods where gunfire was more common than music after dark. Dominic had signed the check because he understood what it meant to grow up in a city that taught fear before trust. He had not expected to visit. The photographs were supposed to take 10 minutes. He would shake the director's hand stand beneath the plaque, say something brief about opportunity and leave before the children finished their afternoon classes. Then the rocket hit him. It bounced from the center of his chest and fell to the floor near his polished shoes. One of his guards reached inside his jacket by instinct. A small voice shouted from the other end of the hallway, "Do not step on him!" A boy ran toward them wearing red sneakers, faded jeans, and a white shirt covered with blue fingerprints. His dark hair curled above his forehead. A strip of silver tape clung to one elbow. He stopped in front of Dominic, breathing hard, and stared at the cardboard rocket on the floor. One wing had folded inward. The boy looked up with open accusation. "You broke Apollo." Dominic looked down at the rocket. "I was standing still. Apollo was testing his emergency landing. He failed. He was distracted." "By what?" The boy narrowed his eyes. "Your face." The hallway became quiet. Mason turned his head slightly, hiding the beginning of a smile. The guard nearest Dominic stepped forward. "Move away from Mr. Mercer." The boy picked up the rocket and pressed it against his chest. "You can move away from me." The guard's expression hardened. Dominic raised one hand. The guard stopped. Dominic looked at the boy again. Most adults could not hold his gaze for more than a few seconds. This child studied him as though Dominic were a difficult drawing that required correction. "What is wrong with my face?" Dominic asked. The boy considered the question seriously. "It looks like there has been a storm behind it for a long time." Something shifted in Mason's expression. The director cleared her throat. "Eli, sweetheart, Mr. Mercer is here for the dedication ceremony." "I know. Ms. Rivera told us he paid for the new room." Eli looked back at Dominic. "Did you?" "Yes." Why Dominic glanced through the glass doors of the new studio. Children sat around low tables shaping clay and painting pieces of wood. Sunlight fell across the floor in warm rectangles, because children need places where they can create things. Eli looked down at Apollo's damaged wing. "Then help me fix this." The director took a quick breath. "Eli, Mr. Mercer is very busy." Dominic lowered himself into a crouch. The movement caused another silence. He had spent most of his adult life watching men straighten when he approached. Men with money, men with guns, Men who believed they were too powerful to fear anyone until Dominic entered the room. Now he knelt on the paint-stained floor in front of a child who had insulted his face. He held out his hand. "Let me see it." Eli hesitated before giving him the rocket. Apollo had been constructed from blue cardboard bottle caps, tape, and 2 plastic straws. A small window had been drawn near the front. Inside the window was a stick figure wearing a helmet. Dominic carefully unfolded the bent wing. "It needs stronger support." Eli crouched beside him. "I already used all the good tape?" Dominic looked at the silver strip attached to Eli's elbow. Eli followed his gaze. "That is medical tape. For your elbow, for emergencies. This appears to be an emergency." Eli thought about it, then peeled the tape away and handed it over. Dominic reinforced the wing while Eli held the cardboard steady. "What happened before the crash?" Dominic asked. "Apollo went too high." "Cardboard rockets do not go very high. This one does. I saw the flight. You saw the ending." The reply came so naturally that Dominic paused. Eli pressed a finger against the repaired wing. "People think the ending tells them everything. It does not." Dominic looked at the boy's face. "How old are you? 6 years and 10 months. The months matter. Of course they matter. Grown-ups always steal them because they are impatient." Dominic's fingers became still around the rocket. 6 years and 10 months. The child he had lost would have been nearly 7, old enough to argue with strangers, old enough to build impossible machines from cardboard, old enough to stand in front of him without fear. The thought entered before he could stop it sharp enough to change his breathing. Eli noticed. "Does your chest hurt?" "No, you made a face." "I have been told my face has problems. It has too much weather." Dominic handed Apollo back. "You may be right." Eli inspected the repaired wing. He bent it once, then twice, testing the tape. "It is better." "Good. But if we are going to be friends, there are rules." Dominic almost looked behind himself to see whether the child was speaking to someone else. "Friends, you helped Apollo. That makes us friends. It makes us possible friends. The rules decide the rest." Mason folded his hands in front of him. He was no longer pretending not to listen. Eli raised one finger. "No shouting at children." Dominic looked toward his guard. "I did not shout. Your friend almost did. He is not my friend." The guard looked offended but remained silent. Eli raised a second finger. "No disappearing without saying goodbye." Dominic's gaze returned to the boy. "Why is that a rule?" "Because people say they are coming back when they want you to stop asking questions." For the first time, Eli's confidence weakened. It lasted only a second, but Dominic saw it. "Who disappeared?" he asked. Eli shrugged. "No one." "That is not an answer. My mom says I do not have to answer serious men when they use courtroom voices." Dominic's mouth almost moved. Eli raised a third finger. "One real smile every time we meet." "I do not smile on command." "Then you need more practice than I thought." Dominic looked at him. Eli waited. Around them, adults had gone completely still. No one in the building appeared willing to interrupt whatever was happening. Dominic let out a quiet breath through his nose. It was not a smile, but something changed around his eyes. Eli pointed at him. "There. That was not a smile. It was a beginning." Dominic stood slowly. The director stepped forward again. "Eli, perhaps you should return to class." Eli ignored her. "What is your name, Dominic?" Eli repeated it once. "Too serious. It is my name. I will call you Dom." Mason lowered his head. The guard stared straight ahead. No one called Dominic Mercer Dom. Not anymore. His mother had called him that before she died. His younger brother had used it when they were boys. Claire had whispered it in dark rooms when he was still capable of believing that love could protect anything. The name had not sounded gentle in 6 years. Dominic should have corrected him. Instead, he asked, "What should I call you, Eli Dawson?" But Eli is enough. Then Dominic should be enough. Eli considered that. No, Dom fits better. Before Dominic could respond, a box struck the floor behind them. Paintbrushes scattered across the hallway. A glass jar rolled in a slow circle before tipping against the wall. Dominic turned. Claire stood 10 feet away. For one impossible moment, no one moved. She wore a cream sweater beneath a blue work apron. Her dark hair had been tied carelessly behind her head, though several strands had escaped around her face. There was paint on one wrist and a faint line of exhaustion beneath her eyes. She looked older than the woman in Dominic's memories, not weaker, more guarded. She had once stood beside him in the kitchen of the Mercer estate with flour on her cheek and one hand resting over the curve of her stomach. She had once laughed when he painted the nursery ceiling the wrong shade of blue. She had once pressed his palm against her body and whispered that their baby moved whenever Dominic spoke. Then she had vanished. The doctor had told him the child was gone. The papers had told him Claire had chosen it. The recording had told him she wanted no part of the life they had made. For 6 years, Dominic had built his anger around those facts until they became stronger than memory. Now she was standing beneath paper stars with a child between them. Claire. Her name came out rougher than he intended. Eli looked from Dominic to his mother. "You know each other." Claire's eyes remained fixed on Dominic. "Yes." Eli brightened. "Good. Then I do not have to explain the rules twice." Claire stepped forward and crouched to collect the brushes. Her hands shook. Eli noticed immediately. "Mom, I am fine. You dropped everything." "It slipped. You said people say things slip when they do not want to explain why they drop them." Claire closed her eyes briefly. Dominic watched her gather the brushes. Her left hand was bare. No wedding ring. No other ring either. His gaze moved toward Eli. The boy knelt beside her and began placing brushes into the box. "Mom, this is Dom." He fixed Apollo. Claire's hand stopped. "Dom, he said his name is Dominic, but that sounds like a name for someone who signs papers all day." Dominic saw something painful cross her face. "How old is your son?" he asked. Claire looked up sharply. Eli answered for her. 6 years and 10 months. Dominic's chest tightened again. Claire rose too quickly. "Eli, take Apollo to Ms. Rivera. She needs help preparing the studio. I am still talking. Please." The word carried enough fear to change him. Eli looked between them. Did Dom do something bad? No, Dominic watched Claire say it. She could have called him dangerous. She could have told the child to stay away from him. Instead, she said no. Eli held Apollo beneath his arm. "Are you leaving?" he asked Dominic. "I have not decided. That is almost yes." Dominic looked at the boy. "I will say goodbye before I leave." Eli nodded. "You promised. I know." Eli followed Ms. Rivera into the studio, though he looked back twice before the doors closed behind him. The moment he disappeared, Claire's expression changed. "Do not come near him again." Dominic stared at her. "You have a son." Her jaw tightened. "That is not your concern. You disappeared after ending my child, and now I find you raising another one 12 blocks from my home." Claire flinched as though he had struck her. Dominic saw it. The pain should have satisfied something in him. It did not. "You wanted to be a mother," he said. "Do not do this here. You wanted a child." Her voice fell to a whisper. "Stop. Just not mine." Claire looked toward the studio doors. Children laughed on the other side of the glass. Someone began playing an uneven melody on a small piano. She turned back to Dominic. "You have no idea what happened." "I know what the doctors told me." "You know what you were permitted to hear." His eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" "It means some graves are built without bodies." The words entered him slowly. Before he could question her, Claire lifted the box and moved past him. Dominic caught her wrist. Not hard, but fast enough to make her freeze. Her entire body changed beneath his hand. Her shoulders tightened. Her breath stopped. She looked down at his fingers with a fear that did not belong to the woman who had once trusted him. Dominic released her immediately. Claire rubbed her wrist even though he had barely touched it. "Who are you afraid of?" he asked. She looked at him. For a second he thought she might answer. Then the studio door opened. Eli ran into the hallway holding Apollo above his head. He survived. Claire forced her face to soften. "That is wonderful." Eli looked at Dominic. "Can you come tomorrow?" Claire answered before Dominic could. "No," Eli frowned. "I did not ask you." "Eli, Apollo needs a launch assistant." Dominic looked at Claire. Every part of her expression told him to refuse. He looked back at Eli. "I will try." Eli shook his head. "That is almost disappearing language." Dominic remembered the second rule. "I will come back tomorrow." Claire's eyes hardened. Eli smiled. "At 3:30. Do not be late. Rockets do not wait for serious men." Dominic inclined his head. 3:30. Claire took Eli's hand. "We are leaving." Eli waved Apollo in Dominic's direction. Practice the smile. Dominic watched them walk toward the front doors. Claire did not look back. Eli did. Outside, late afternoon light turned the street gold. A streetcar rattled past the corner. Music drifted from an open restaurant door. Tourists moved along the sidewalk with drinks in their hands, unaware of the black SUV idling beneath a live oak across the street. Claire saw it immediately. Her steps slowed. The driver wore sunglasses despite the fading light. His head turned slightly as she and Eli emerged from Harbor House. Claire pulled Eli closer. "Mom, you are hurting my hand." She loosened her grip. "I am sorry." "Do you know that car?" "No." The lie came too quickly. Eli looked up at her. Claire guided him toward the streetcar stop without looking across the road again. The SUV remained where it was. Inside, the driver raised his phone and took 3 photographs. One of Claire, one of Eli, one of Dominic standing behind the glass doors of Harbor House watching them leave. The driver sent Eli's photograph to an unknown number. A reply appeared seconds later. "Confirm the age." Then another message followed. "Do not let Mercer see him again." Claire and Eli boarded the streetcar. She chose a seat near the rear exit and placed Eli beside the window. He pressed Apollo against the glass and made quiet engine noises as the car began to move. Claire watched the SUV disappear behind them. Her pulse did not slow. "Did Dom make you sad?" Eli asked. She looked at him. "What, your face changed when you saw him?" Claire turned toward the passing city. Balconies slipped by beneath hanging plants. A trumpet player stood near a corner, his open case collecting dollar bills. "I knew him a long time ago. Was he your friend?" The answer became trapped somewhere behind her ribs. "Yes." "What happened? Grown-up things." "That means you do not want to tell me. It means the answer is complicated." Eli leaned his head against the window. "Can I still be his friend?" Claire closed her eyes. She should have said no. She should have taken Eli home, packed their emergency bag, and left New Orleans before midnight. She had done it before. Baton Rouge, Mobile, Jackson. 3 apartments in Houston, a rented room outside Lafayette. Every time a strange car remained too long on the street, Claire moved. Every time someone asked too many questions about Eli's father, she changed clinics, jobs, or schools. She had built their life from temporary addresses and quiet exits. But Eli was nearly 7 now. He remembered rooms. He remembered teachers. He remembered the names of neighbors and the trees outside his windows. Running no longer erased the past. It only taught him that nothing was allowed to last. "I do not know," she said. Eli sighed. That is grown-up language for probably no. Claire reached for his hand. He let her hold it. Across the city, Dominic returned to the Mercer estate after the Harbor House director finished the dedication ceremony without him. White roses filled the main hall. Staff carried gold-trimmed place cards into the dining room. A wedding planner stood beside the staircase discussing floral arches with Evelyn Mercer. Lila Whitmore sat near the windows reviewing the guest list. She looked up when Dominic entered. "You missed the final tasting." "I was delayed." Evelyn turned. Her silver dress caught the light. By the children's center, Dominic removed his cufflinks. By Claire. The room became still. Lila looked between them. Evelyn's expression did not change, but her fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. "Claire Dawson. She works there." Evelyn recovered quickly. "How unfortunate." Dominic studied her. "She has a son." A small silence followed. Lila closed the guest book. Evelyn took a slow sip of champagne. People move on. Dominic's gaze remained on her. "He is 6. The glass stopped at Evelyn's mouth, only for a moment. Then she lowered it. "You should not allow an old betrayal to disturb your judgment 3 days before your wedding." Dominic looked toward Lila. She held his gaze with controlled dignity. Their engagement had never been built on love. They both understood that. Still, she deserved more than being discussed as though she were not present. "I need to speak with Mason," Dominic said. Evelyn stepped into his path. "Dominic." He stopped. "Claire made her choice years ago, so I was told." The words changed something in Evelyn's face. Dominic saw it. She smiled. "You saw the documents. I saw what was placed in front of me." He walked past her. Mason was waiting in the library. Dominic closed the door behind them. Find everything about Claire Dawson. Mason did not ask why. Addresses, all of them. Employment, yes. The boy Dominic looked toward the dark windows. Especially the boy. Mason studied him. What are you looking for? Dominic thought of Claire saying some graves were built without bodies. I do not know. Mason nodded once and left. Dominic remained in the library alone. On the desk sat a framed photograph from 6 years earlier. Someone had turned it face down after Claire disappeared. Dominic had never thrown it away. He lifted the frame. Claire stood beside him at a charity dinner, one hand resting over the barely visible curve of her stomach. She was smiling at the camera. Dominic was not. He was looking at her. He remembered that night. She had leaned close and whispered that the baby had kicked during a boring speech. Dominic had placed his hand against her stomach beneath the table and kept it there for the rest of dinner. He set the photograph down. For 6 years, he had believed the child in that picture never lived long enough to open his eyes. At 2:17 in the morning, Mason returned. Dominic was still awake. Mason placed a thin file on the desk. No father listed on the birth certificate, he said. No husband, no long-term partner. Claire has moved 7 times in 6 years. She pays cash when she can. She works at Harbor House and repairs clothing from home. Dominic opened the file. A school photograph showed Eli smiling with one front tooth missing. Dominic stared at the boy's eyes, Claire's eyes, his mother's chin, his own dark hair. He turned the page. Mason remained standing. There is something else. Dominic found the birth record. He read the date once, then again. The room seemed to narrow around him. Mason spoke quietly. Eli Dawson was born 4 months and 19 days after the night you were told Claire's pregnancy had been terminated. Dominic calculated the months even though the answer had already entered his blood. His fingers tightened around the page. She was still pregnant when she left. The words remained in the library long after Dominic spoke them. Mason did not answer. There was nothing useful to say. The date on the birth record had already broken open 6 years of certainty. Dominic looked again at Eli's school photograph. The boy smiled, as though the world had never taught him caution. One front tooth was missing. His hair refused to stay flat. There was a blue mark near his collar, probably paint or ink. 6 years and 10 months. Dominic remembered the weight of Claire's stomach beneath his palm. He remembered lying awake beside her because she had been unable to sleep. He remembered arguing with a contractor about the nursery windows and buying a crib that Claire said was too expensive. He remembered the final medical report stating that their child had died before he could be born. His gaze moved to the birth date. Who signed this record? A physician named Rebecca Hall Mason said. She retired 3 years ago. The hospital where Eli was born closed after a financial investigation. I am trying to locate the archived files. Find her, I will. Dominic stood. Mason watched him reach for his coat. Where are you going to Claire? It is after 2 in the morning. Dominic continued toward the door. Mason stepped in front of him. Few men would have attempted it. Fewer would have survived the decision if Dominic had been in a different state of mind. If Eli is your son, Mason said, the first thing he cannot see is you forcing your way into his home. Dominic stopped. His anger had always been useful. It made decisions simple. It divided the world into threats and things he controlled. Now it had nowhere clean to go. Claire had hidden his son. Claire had also spent 6 years moving from city to city with no husband, no protection, and no permanent address. Dominic looked at Mason. Have a car ready at 6. Mason moved aside. Dominic did not sleep. At dawn, rain covered New Orleans in a gray sheet. Water ran along the iron balconies and collected in the cracks of the old streets. The city looked washed clean, though Dominic knew better than to trust appearances. He arrived outside Claire's apartment shortly after 7. The building stood above a closed tailor shop in mid-city. The sign below the windows had faded until only a few gold letters remained. A narrow staircase climbed along the side of the building. The railing was rusted. One security light flickered above the entrance. Dominic left Mason and the driver across the street. He climbed the stairs alone. Before he could knock, he heard a child laughing inside. The sound stopped him. Eli was arguing with someone about cereal. This one is the commander. Claire's voice answered. It is a piece of cereal. It has a sword. It has a raisin stuck to it. That is the sword. Dominic stood outside the door listening to an ordinary morning he should have known. He raised his hand and knocked. The voices inside became quiet. A lock turned, then another. Claire opened the door only a few inches. Her face changed when she saw him. She wore a loose gray sweater and dark pants. Her hair had been pulled into a knot. There were shadows beneath her eyes. What are you doing here? Dominic held up the file. We need to talk. No. She tried to close the door. Dominic placed his hand against it. Claire looked down at his fingers. The fear in her face returned. He loosened his pressure but did not move away. Eli was born 4 months and 19 days after you disappeared. Her breathing changed. Take your hand off my door. You were still pregnant. Dominic, tell me I am wrong. Behind her a chair scraped against the kitchen floor. He had watched men betray him and ordered consequences before the anger cooled. He had buried his mother, his brother, and the future he believed Claire destroyed. Nothing had prepared him for the return of someone he had already mourned. He looked at the door. My son is in there. Claire stepped between him and the entrance. He does not know. Dominic's voice shook. You never told him who I was. I told him his father could not be part of our lives. You told him I was dead. No, you let me believe he was. Claire's expression hardened. I let you believe what kept him alive. The shock inside Dominic turned. You stole 6 years from me. Your family tried to steal his entire life. My family. Her silence gave the words weight. Dominic lowered his voice. Claire looked toward the stairs. You need to leave. No, if they know you found us, they will come again. Who will come go back to your wedding? He caught the bitterness beneath the words. This has nothing to do with Lila. It has everything to do with her. I did not know about Eli. You did not know a great many things. Dominic held up the file. I know you moved 7 times. Claire's face changed. You investigated us. I investigated a child who might be mine. You had no right to enter his life through files. I had a right to know he existed. The apartment door opened behind her. Eli appeared wearing dinosaur pajama pants and 1 red sock. A spoon remained in his hand. He looked up at Dominic. Dom. Claire turned quickly. Go inside. Eli ignored her. You came early. Dominic looked at the child he now knew was his. Every detail seemed different. The shape of Eli's mouth. The way he stood with one shoulder slightly forward. The small line between his eyebrows when he was confused. Dominic had seen that expression in his own mirror. I did. You said 3:30, I remember. Eli looked between the adults. Why are you talking in the hallway? Claire moved toward him. We are discussing something private. Is it about me? Neither answered. Eli studied Dominic's face. You did not practice smiling. Dominic lowered himself into a crouch. His legs felt unsteady, though he would have denied it to anyone else. I had a difficult night. Did Apollo crash at your house too? No, that is good. 2 crashes would be suspicious. Claire placed a hand on Eli's shoulder. Finish breakfast. Eli looked at Dominic. Are you staying? Dominic glanced at Claire. No. Eli frowned. But you came back. I did. Then why leave? Dominic searched for an answer that would not place adult damage inside a child. Your mother and I need time to talk. Eli looked at Claire. Are you mad at him? No. The answer was too quick. Eli sighed. You both use bad truth. Claire's face softened despite herself. What is bad truth? When the words are not lies, but they hide the important part. Dominic looked at Claire. The child had learned more from 6 years of silence than either of them understood. Eli turned toward the kitchen. Do not disappear, Dominic answered before the door closed. I will not. Claire waited until Eli was out of sight. Then she stepped into the hallway again. You cannot make promises to him. I will not break that one. You do not know what promises cost in this house. Dominic looked around at the peeling paint and weak light. What happened to you? Claire laughed once, without humor. You believed I killed our child. That is what happened to me. I believed the evidence. You believed the people who gave it to you. He felt the accusation strike. What was I supposed to believe me? You were gone. I was running. From whom Claire turned away. Dominic reached for her, then stopped before touching her. Tell me. She stared at the rain moving down the window. When I was 5 months pregnant, Evelyn invited me to dinner. Dominic's body became still. She said she wanted peace between us. She sent a car. Claire's voice changed as she spoke. It became distant, controlled as though each word had been wrapped and stored for years. The driver took the river road. I knew something was wrong when we passed the restaurant. I told him to stop. He did not answer. Dominic remembered that night. He had been called to a warehouse near the docks after reports of gunfire. His convoy had changed routes twice. A truck struck the lead vehicle. Dominic woke hours later with stitches above his temple. Claire continued. The brakes failed near the bridge. I remember the car turning. I remember glass. Then I woke in a room without windows. Dominic's jaw tightened. Where St. Catherine's Women's Clinic. He knew the name. It had closed 3 years earlier. My wrists were secured to the bed. There was tape on my arm. I could not feel my legs. Dominic's voice became quiet. Who was there, Evelyn? The name entered the hallway like smoke. Dominic said nothing. She told me you had made a decision. She said the baby created a weakness your enemies would use. She said you could not afford a wife who questioned the family. I never said that. I know that now. Claire pressed her fingers against her opposite wrist. At the time, I did not. What did she show you? Nothing. She did not need to. I heard Grant outside the room. Dominic's eyes sharpened. What did he say? Resolve it before Dominic comes back. The floor beneath Dominic seemed to shift. Claire looked at him. There was a nurse named Hannah. She checked the fetal monitor when Evelyn left. She leaned close and told me the heartbeat was strong. Dominic closed his eyes for 1 second. Strong. His son had been alive. She said there was no legitimate order for a procedure. The doctor had been paid. The papers were already prepared. Claire's voice began to tremble. Hannah loosened one restraint. She told me to wait until the storm knocked out the lights. When it did, she brought clothes and took me through the laundry corridor. Dominic pictured Claire injured, drugged, carrying their child through a dark clinic while he lay unconscious elsewhere. Why did you not come to me? I tried. The answer came immediately. Dominic looked at her. What, Hannah found a phone in an empty office. I called your private number. I never received a call. Evelyn answered. His expression changed. She said you were awake. She said you did not want to speak to me. Then she put the phone near someone and I heard your voice. Dominic searched his memory. After the accident, he had drifted in and out of consciousness. Evelyn had stood beside his bed with a phone in her hand. She had told him Claire was refusing to see him. What did I say? You said do whatever she wants. I cannot hear this again. Dominic remembered the moment. The doctor had just played the edited recording. Claire's voice had said she would not bring a child into his world. Dominic had believed she was confirming the procedure. I was talking about the recording. I thought you were talking about me. The truth opened between them with unbearable precision. Claire wiped at her cheek. I ran because I believed the man I loved had given permission to erase our child. Dominic looked at the door behind her. And you gave birth alone. Hannah found a doctor outside Lafayette. I used my maiden name. Was he healthy? He was small. His lungs were weak for the first few days. Dominic's eyes moved to the door again. You were alone, yes. The word contained a hospital room, a newborn's cry, and every night after. Dominic turned away and braced one hand against the wall. I was shown consent papers. I never signed them. Your signature was there. It was copied. I heard your voice. They cut it. I was told you refused to see me. I was asking for you. Dominic lowered his head. He remembered the empty nursery, the crib covered by a sheet, the pale blue ceiling he could not bear to repaint. I hated you, he said. Claire's answer was quiet. I know. I believed you chose to kill him, and I believed you chose power over both of us. He looked back at her. I would never have allowed it. You allowed Evelyn to speak for you. The words struck deeper because they were true. Dominic had built a house where orders passed through blood and loyalty. He had trusted Evelyn because she had raised him after his mother died. He had trusted Grant because Grant had protected the family accounts for decades. He had never imagined they would use that trust against Claire. My divorce papers, he said. Did you file them? Claire frowned. No. They arrived 3 months after you disappeared. I signed nothing. They stated there was no living child. Her face lost color. Dominic watched the final certainty collapse. Claire whispered, "They erased him on paper." Before Dominic could answer, a phone vibrated inside her sweater pocket. She looked at the screen. The color left her face. "What is it?" "Nothing. Claire." She tried to put the phone away. Dominic held out his hand. "No. Show me. It is not your decision." The phone vibrated again. Claire looked toward the apartment. Dominic saw fear rise in her eyes. She turned the screen toward him. The message contained no name. "You should have stayed gone." Below it was a photograph of Eli leaving Harbor House the previous afternoon. A second line appeared. "The boy will not reach 7. Dominic read the message twice. The grief inside him became something colder. "Pack a bag." Claire shook her head. "No. They know where you live. They know because you came near him. They were watching before I arrived. The car outside Harbor House." Dominic looked at her. "You saw it. I recognized the driver from the clinic. Why did you not tell me? Because telling you has never made me safer." The phone vibrated once more. This message contained a photograph of Eli's school entrance. "We know the morning route." Claire covered her mouth. From inside the apartment, Eli began humming to himself. The ordinary sound made the threat worse. Dominic lowered his voice. "Listen carefully. I am not taking him from you. I am not telling him who I am today. I am not bringing you to the Mercer estate." Claire stared at him. "But no one gets close to either of you again. You cannot promise that. I can promise they will have to come through me. That is exactly what frightens me." Dominic accepted the words without defending himself. "Then be afraid of me somewhere they cannot reach him." Claire looked at the photograph on the screen. Her resistance broke slowly. She opened the apartment door. Eli stood in the kitchen holding Apollo. "Are we going somewhere?" Claire forced her voice to remain steady. "For a few days. Do I have school?" "No." His eyes widened. "Is this a vacation?" Dominic looked at Claire. She answered, "Something like that." Eli held Apollo closer. "Can Dom come?" Claire did not respond. Dominic said, "I will be nearby." Eli smiled. "Good. Apollo needs someone tall." Claire packed 2 bags in less than 10 minutes. Clothes, medicine, Eli's inhaler, a notebook, a worn stuffed bear he claimed he no longer needed. Apollo went into Eli's hands because he refused to place it in a suitcase. When they stepped onto the street, Mason's men had already taken positions. Eli looked at them. "Are those your friends?" Dominic opened the car door. "They work with me. They all have storm faces." Mason looked away. Eli climbed inside. Claire hesitated beside the car. Dominic did not touch her. "You choose the seat," he said. She entered and sat beside Eli. The drive took them beyond the city where buildings gave way to cypress trees and dark water. Rain softened to mist. The road narrowed until the car turned through an iron gate hidden behind hanging moss. A quiet house stood near the edge of the bayou. Claire looked at Dominic. "This is not the estate. No. Who owns it?" "A company that does not use my name. That does not answer the question. I own it." Eli pressed his face to the window. "There is a dock. There is also deep water," Claire said. "You do not go near it alone. I know. You say that before doing things you do not know." Mason opened the front door. The house was simple, with 2 bedrooms upstairs and a wide kitchen facing the water. No staff waited inside. No portraits of Mercer ancestors watched from the walls. Claire walked through every room before putting down the bags. Dominic allowed it. She checked the windows, the back door, and the second staircase. Then she turned to him. "My rules." Dominic nodded. "No one enters Eli's room without permission. No one speaks to him about being a Mercer. No visible guns. No decisions about school doctors or where he lives without me. Agreed." Claire searched his face. "You did not even think about it." "I have thought about nothing else since 2:17 this morning." Eli entered the kitchen. "Do you know how to make grilled cheese?" Dominic looked at him. "Yes." Claire raised an eyebrow. Dominic corrected himself. "I know people who make grilled cheese." "That was not the question," Eli said. 40 minutes later, Dominic stood at the stove with his sleeves rolled up while smoke rose from a blackened sandwich. Eli sat at the counter watching with concern. "You turned it too late. I followed your instructions." "You followed them slowly." Dominic lifted the sandwich. Eli examined it. That one cannot be saved. Dominic looked toward Claire. She stood in the doorway. For 1 second she smiled. It vanished when Mason entered carrying a folder. Dominic saw his expression and turned off the stove. "What did you find?" Mason placed the folder on the counter. "The divorce documents." Claire frowned. "What divorce documents?" Dominic looked at her. "The ones you filed 3 months after you disappeared. I filed nothing." Mason opened the folder. The signature at the bottom looked almost identical to Claire's. Almost. Beneath it was a declaration stating that she wanted no contact, no property, and no claim on the Mercer name. The final sentence read, "There is no living child of this marriage." Claire gripped the edge of the counter. Dominic read the page again. Mason placed a second document beside it. "The court seal is counterfeit. The case number belongs to an unrelated property dispute. These papers were never legally filed." Silence filled the kitchen. Eli remained in the next room making engine sounds for Apollo. Claire looked at Dominic. "What does that mean?" His eyes met hers across the forged papers and 6 stolen years. "It means we were never divorced." Claire stared at him. Dominic's voice fell quieter. "You are still my wife." The words did not sound romantic in the kitchen. They sounded dangerous. Claire stared at Dominic across the forged papers while the burned smell of grilled cheese still hung in the air. Outside, rain moved across the bayou in silver lines. Inside the next room, Eli made quiet rocket noises for Apollo, unaware that his parents had just discovered their marriage had survived 6 years of lies. Claire looked down at the signature copied beneath her name. "I do not feel married." Dominic did not move. "I know. You believed I abandoned you." "Yes." "I believed you ordered the death of our child." His jaw tightened. "Yes, a piece of paper does not make us husband and wife again." "No." The answer came without resistance. Claire looked up almost surprised. Dominic gathered the documents and closed the folder. "It means only that Evelyn and Grant did not finish what they started." Claire folded her arms across her chest. "And what do you intend to do with that information? Find out who helped them." "That is not what I asked." Dominic met her gaze. "I am not going to force you back into a marriage you no longer recognize." The quiet certainty in his voice unsettled her more than an argument would have. 6 years earlier, Dominic had been a man who solved every problem by taking control of it. If a door would not open, he found another entrance. If a man refused to cooperate, Dominic made refusal too expensive. Now he stood in front of Claire with proof that she was still legally his wife and made no claim on her. Eli appeared in the doorway holding the burned sandwich on a plate. "Can ducks eat this?" Claire turned quickly. "No." Dominic looked at the blackened bread. "Possibly." Claire gave him a warning look. Eli examined the sandwich. It could be a weapon. Mason covered a cough. Dominic took the plate from Eli. "I will make another one. You need supervision. I have noticed." Eli climbed back onto the stool and pointed toward the pan. Less fire, more patience. Claire watched Dominic spread butter across fresh bread. His hands had broken bones, signed orders, and ended negotiations before other men understood they had begun. Now those same hands moved carefully over cheese and bread while a 6-year-old corrected his technique. The second sandwich survived. Eli took one bite and nodded with serious approval. "Better." Dominic leaned against the counter. "How much better? Not restaurant better." "I did not ask for cruelty." Eli smiled. Claire almost did too. The moment lasted until Dominic's phone rang. He stepped outside to answer it. Claire watched through the kitchen window as he moved toward the porch railing. The rain had stopped, leaving the cypress trees dark and shining. Mason joined him a moment later. Their conversation was quiet, but Claire recognized the change in Dominic's posture. His shoulders became still. His head lowered slightly. The man beside the stove disappeared, replaced by the man New Orleans feared. When he returned, Claire was waiting. "What happened?" "We found the driver from Harbor House." "Alive?" Dominic paused. "Yes." The hesitation told her there had been another possibility. "What did he say? He was paid through a company connected to Grant?" Claire looked toward Eli. "He knows where we are." "No, you cannot know that." Mason changed vehicles twice. "No one outside this property knows the location." Claire looked at Mason. "How many men are outside?" 8, Mason said. "How many know why they are here?" 3. "And how many can Grant buy?" Dominic's expression changed. Claire continued before he could answer. The driver found me after 6 years. Someone watched Eli's school. Someone knew Harbor House. You keep saying we are protected as though your people are not part of the reason I am afraid. Dominic's voice remained controlled. You think one of my men is helping them. I think Evelyn raised you. Grant managed your money. They lived inside your walls while they built a false grave for our son. Why should I trust a man because he wears your suit? Mason said nothing. Dominic looked through the window toward the dark shapes moving beyond the trees. You are right. Claire had prepared herself for anger. The admission took it from her. Dominic turned to Mason. Change the perimeter. No one keeps the same position longer than 2 hours. Separate the communication channels. I want every guard reviewed from the day Claire disappeared. Mason nodded. Dominic added, No one enters the house without Claire's approval. Mason looked once at Claire, then left. Dominic placed both hands on the counter. You should not have to teach me where the danger is. Claire looked at him. No, I should not. That afternoon, Eli discovered an old pair of binoculars in a cabinet and spent an hour studying the water from the porch. He asked whether alligators had fathers. Claire said yes. He asked whether alligator fathers visited. She told him she did not know. Eli turned toward Dominic, who sat at the far end of the porch, speaking quietly into his phone. Do you know Dominic ended the call? Know what do alligator dads stay with their babies? Dominic looked toward the water. Not usually. That is rude. It is their nature. Eli lowered the binoculars. Can nature be wrong? Claire stopped folding a blanket. Dominic looked at Eli for a long moment. Yes, Eli seemed satisfied. He lifted the binoculars again. Dominic's gaze moved toward Claire. She looked away first. The next morning, Dominic took a call before sunrise. By breakfast, he had arranged for Eli to attend a private school outside the city. The campus had guarded gates-controlled entrances and a security staff trained by former federal agents. He believed the plan was reasonable. Claire discovered it when a school administrator called to confirm an interview. She found Dominic in the front room reviewing photographs of Grant's financial records. What did you do? He looked up. What happened? A woman from Briarwood Academy just called me. Dominic closed the file. It is secure. You enrolled Eli in another school. I arranged an interview. Without asking me, it is not safe for him to return to his current school. That decision belongs to me. It belongs to both of us. Claire's eyes hardened. You have known he exists for 2 days. He is my son, and that sentence does not give you ownership of his life. Dominic stood. I am trying to keep him alive. You are trying to make every frightening thing obey you. If you had allowed me to protect you 6 years ago. Claire stepped closer. I tried to reach you. The word stopped him. You do not get to rewrite that night because the truth makes you feel guilty. I called. Your family answered. I ran because every road back to you had someone standing in front of it. Dominic's voice became quieter. The school has better security. It also has your name on half the buildings. Everyone in the city would know where he was. I can control access. You could not control access to your own hospital room. The silence between them became sharp. Eli's voice drifted from upstairs as he talked to Apollo. Claire lowered her tone. He has friends, teachers, a life. You cannot erase everything familiar because you are afraid. Dominic looked toward the ceiling. What would you have me do? Ask me. The answer was simple enough to shame him. Dominic sat down again. He picked up his phone and called the school. Claire listened as he canceled the interview. When the call ended, he removed a document from the file beside him. I had Mason prepare this. He placed it on the table. Claire did not touch it. What is it, a custody agreement? Her body became still. Dominic continued. It states that I will not remove Eli from your care. I will not change his school residence, medical treatment, or legal name without your written approval. I will not seek sole custody. Claire read the first page. The language was formal, clear and signed. You prepared this before our argument. Yes. Why? Because you should have something stronger than my word. Claire looked at him. You think paper will make me trust you? No, then what is this A beginning? The word reminded her of Eli describing Dominic's first attempt at a smile. Claire took the agreement. I will have my own lawyer review it. You should. Dominic returned to the photographs. He did not ask whether she was grateful. He did not ask whether the document changed anything between them. That restraint followed Claire through the rest of the day. At the Mercer estate, Lila Whitmore stood in Dominic's empty study with a copy of the false divorce record in her hands. She had found the case number through a contact in the parish clerk's office. It belonged to a dispute over a damaged roof. Claire's name appeared nowhere in the actual file. Lila entered the drawing room where Evelyn was reviewing floral samples. What was Dominic's divorce case number? Evelyn did not look up. Why are you asking? Because the number in his family records is false. Evelyn placed the flowers aside. Private families manage private matters. Courts do not invent case numbers for private families. Your father understood the arrangement. My father understands contracts. He does not understand forgery. Evelyn stood. You are 3 days from becoming one of the most protected women in Louisiana. Do not destroy your future because a dead relationship has suddenly become interesting. Claire Mercer is alive. Claire Dawson made her choice. Lila studied Evelyn's face. Did she? Evelyn stepped closer. You were selected because you understand discipline. Lila's expression cooled. I was selected because my family controls judges and shipping contracts, then behave like someone who understands value. Lila folded the copy of the false record. I understand it very well. She left before Evelyn could answer. That evening, Mason returned to the safe house carrying a small recorder. Dominic, Claire, and Mason gathered in the kitchen while Eli slept upstairs. Mason placed the recorder on the table. We recovered an audio backup from the clinic's old storage company. Claire stared at the device. Dominic pressed play. Static filled the room. Then Claire's younger voice emerged. I will not raise our child in a house where Evelyn controls every door. Dominic and I need to leave before she decides for us. The recording continued for several seconds. Claire described her fear of Grant and her hope that Dominic would agree to move away from the estate before the baby was born. Dominic stopped the recording. Mason played the version Dominic had heard 6 years earlier. I will not raise our child in Dominic's world. The rest had been removed. Claire looked at him. That is what they gave you, yes. Dominic's face had gone pale. He played the original again. Dominic and I need to leave. He turned away from the table. Claire watched him move toward the sink. For 6 years, he had believed she planned to leave him. Now her own voice proved she had been trying to leave with him. Dominic placed both hands against the counter. I would have gone. Claire's throat tightened. You do not know that, I do. Your family was your entire world. You were carrying my world. Claire looked down. The words would once have comforted her. Now they reached a place surrounded by too much scar tissue. Mason cleared his throat. There is more. He spread several documents across the table. Payments from Grant's investment company to St. Catherine's Clinic. Security footage showing Evelyn entering the building the night Claire disappeared. Calls between Grant and a former attorney employed by the Whitmore family. A falsified court seal requested by one of Evelyn's assistants. Dominic studied each piece. Where is the nurse? We found a woman who worked with Hannah Price. She says Hannah left Louisiana after the clinic closed. Find her. She may not want to be found. Claire looked at Mason. She saved my son. Mason nodded. I will find her. 2 days passed. The safe house settled into a strange rhythm. Dominic worked at one end of the dining table while Eli built a launch platform at the other. Claire repaired clothing near the window. Mason came and went with information. There were moments when they resembled a family. Those moments frightened Claire most. On the 3rd morning, Eli began coughing. By noon, the cough had turned into wheezing. Claire checked his inhaler. Nearly empty. The humidity does this sometimes, she said. Dominic was already reaching for his phone. I will bring a doctor here. He needs his pediatric clinic. Claire, they know his history. He has an appointment available at 3. It is not safe. He cannot breathe properly. Dominic looked at Eli, who sat on the sofa, pretending the tightness in his chest did not bother him. Mason arranged the route. Only 5 people received the details. They used a different car, changed directions twice, and entered the clinic through an underground garage. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. The doctor examined Eli and prescribed a new inhaler. Claire's shoulders began to relax. Then the fire alarm sounded. Red lights flashed along the hallway. A nurse opened the door. "We need to evacuate." Dominic stepped into the corridor first. Parents carried crying children toward the stairs. Staff directed everyone away from the elevators. Smoke appeared near the far end of the hall. Mason spoke into his radio. No one answered. Dominic turned. Two men in paramedic uniforms entered through the emergency doors. One pushed an empty wheelchair. The other approached Claire. "Mrs. Dawson, this way. Your driver sent us." Claire stopped. "What driver?" The man smiled. "Mr. Cole. He said the garage exit is blocked." Eli looked at the man's badge, then at his eyes. He stepped behind Claire. "What is the Blue Lantern word?" The man blinked. "What?" "The word." Claire's hand closed around Eli's shoulder. The second man moved toward them. "We do not have time for games." Eli shook his head. "My mom says unexpected adults need the word." The first man reached for him. Dominic saw the movement. He crossed the hallway before the man's fingers closed around Eli's arm. Dominic struck him once in the throat and drove him against the wall. The second attacker pulled a weapon from beneath his medical jacket. Mason came through the stairwell and hit the man from the side. The weapon slid across the floor. Children screamed. Claire dropped around Eli, covering his head with her arms. Dominic had the first attacker by the collar. The man struggled for breath. "Who sent you?" He said nothing. Dominic tightened his grip. His other hand moved toward the weapon inside his coat. Then he saw Eli watching. The boy's face was pale. His breathing came fast and shallow. Fear had taken the place of every joke. Dominic released the attacker. "Take them alive," he told Mason. Mason's men dragged both attackers toward the stairwell. Dominic remained where he was. He did not approach until Claire looked at him. Eli held the new inhaler in one hand. I remembered the word he whispered. Claire pulled him close. "You did exactly right. I saw his eyes." "I know." He was smiling, but his eyes were not. "You trusted yourself." Eli looked past her at Dominic. "You came fast." Dominic lowered himself to one knee. "Yes." "Were you scared?" Dominic answered without hiding behind pride. "More than I have ever been." Eli stared at him for several seconds. Then he stepped out of Claire's arms and crossed the space between them. He wrapped both arms around Dominic's neck. Dominic froze. His hands rose slowly as though sudden movement might break the moment. Then he held Eli against him. The boy's small body trembled. Dominic closed his eyes. Claire watched his face change. This was not the man who ruled rooms through fear. This was a father, realizing how close he had come to losing his child a second time. Something inside her softened. Not forgiveness, not trust, but the first place where either might someday begin. Mason approached when the hallway had cleared. His expression carried bad news. The route was leaked. Dominic stood with Eli still close beside him. By whom? One of the men on the outer team. He was recruited through Grant. Dominic's face became cold. "Bring him to me." Claire heard the meaning beneath the order. "No," Dominic looked at her. "He gave our son to kidnappers, and Eli is watching you." Dominic turned toward the boy. Eli held Apollo under one arm and Claire's hand with the other. Claire stepped closer to Dominic. "If his first memory of learning who you are becomes blood, Evelyn still decides what kind of father you become." The words entered him slowly. Dominic looked at Mason. "Turn all three over to the federal task force. Include the payment records." Mason raised an eyebrow. "You are certain?" "Yes." It was not mercy. It was a different kind of war. That night they returned to the safe house under heavier protection. Eli fell asleep beside Claire with Apollo resting against his chest. Dominic stood outside his room for several minutes without entering. He remembered Claire's first rule. No one enters without permission. He remained in the hallway. Mason arrived shortly before midnight. He carried a phone and a photograph of a woman in her late 50s. "We found Hannah Price." Claire came down the stairs. "Where is she, Colorado? She has lived under her married name for 5 years. Will she speak?" Mason held up the phone. "She already did." Dominic listened as Hannah described the clinic, the false order, Claire's condition, and Evelyn's instructions. Her voice shook, but she did not hesitate. She had kept copies of the fetal report and the original admission log. She was willing to testify. There was one condition. "The truth has to come out before the wedding," Hannah said through the speaker. Once Evelyn controls the Whitmore Alliance, every record left will disappear. Dominic looked through the windows toward the distant glow of New Orleans. Claire watched the stillness return to his face. "The wedding will happen," he said. She turned sharply. Dominic looked at her. "But no one is going to leave it married." The words settled over the room like the final turn of a lock. Claire stood near the staircase, one hand resting on the banister. Mason remained beside the table with Hannah Price's testimony still open on his phone. Outside, the bayou was black beneath the moon, and the security lights moved across the trees in slow white arcs. Dominic had already turned toward the evidence. Claire knew that look. It was the expression he wore when grief became strategy. "You are not taking Eli into that cathedral," she said. Dominic looked at her. "No, you are not using him to make Evelyn confess." "No. And I am not walking into a room full of people who spent 6 years believing I murdered my own child." Dominic closed the folder. "You would not be walking in for them." "Then who for yourself?" Claire gave a quiet, bitter laugh. "That sounds convenient coming from a man who will be standing at the altar. I will stand there because Evelyn needs to believe she still controls the room. She has controlled every room since before I met you. Not this one." Claire crossed her arms. "You want witnesses. I want people she cannot silence. You want humiliation. I want the truth attached to her name before she can bury it under another family's influence." Claire stepped closer. "And where does that leave Eli?" Dominic's answer came immediately. "With Mason until I know the room is secure." "He is not evidence. I know. He is not your heir." Dominic held her gaze. "He is my son. That is not the same thing in your world." "No," he said quietly. "It is not." Claire waited. Dominic continued. "I will not introduce him as the future of the Mercer family. I will not place a title on him before he understands what it means. I will say his name, nothing more than the truth." The distinction mattered. Claire did not want it to. She looked toward the stairs. Eli was sleeping in the room above them with Apollo beneath one arm and his new inhaler on the nightstand. He had nearly been taken from her that afternoon. The men responsible had known the route, the appointment, and the exact moment when fear would make a hallway chaotic. Running had once kept him alive. Now the people hunting him had found every path she used. Silence no longer protected him. It only protected the people who had created it. Claire looked back at Dominic. "If I agree, I decide when Eli learns who you are. Yes. You do not announce it to the cathedral before he hears it from us. Yes. You do not touch me for the cameras." Dominic's expression tightened. "There will be no cameras inside. There are always cameras when powerful families gather. Then no one will mistake you for a possession." Claire studied him. 6 years earlier, Dominic might have responded with anger. He might have told her that no one would dare misunderstand his intentions. He might have assumed his certainty was enough. Now he waited. "I will go," she said. Dominic lowered his head once. Not victory, acceptance. Mason began arranging the evidence before sunrise. Hannah would testify through a secure connection. The original fetal report would be delivered by a federal attorney. The clinic payments had already been copied to 3 separate locations. Lila's family attorney had been contacted without Evelyn's knowledge. Dominic gave Mason one instruction above all others. Nothing depends on a single document. Mason understood. Evelyn had survived for years because every lie rested behind another one. If one piece failed, she replaced it. If one witness spoke, she discredited them. If one record surfaced, she produced a cleaner version. This time, every fact would support the next. Claire spent the morning with Eli on the back porch. He sat at the small wooden table repairing Apollo's nose with blue paper and glue. "Why do I need the navy jacket?" he asked. "Because we are going somewhere formal. Is it a funeral? No, a court. No, a restaurant with tiny food." Claire almost smiled. "It is a wedding." Eli pressed the paper into place. "Whose?" She looked toward the water. "Dominic's." His hand stopped. "Dom is getting married. He was supposed to." Eli frowned. "What does supposed to mean?" "It means adults made plans before they knew the truth." "What truth?" Claire sat beside him. She had imagined telling Eli about his father many times. In some versions, he was older. In others, they lived far from New Orleans, and danger had finally become a story she could explain without checking the windows. None of those imagined conversations began beside a bayou hours before a Mafia wedding. Dominic was someone very important to me, she said. Before, yes. Was he your husband? Claire felt the question in her chest. Yes. Eli looked toward the house where Dominic stood inside speaking with Mason. Then why does he not live with us? Because people lied to us. They made him believe something terrible about me, and they made me believe something terrible about him. Eli thought about that. Did he believe them? Yes. Did you? Yes? That was not smart. No, Claire whispered. It was not. Eli returned to Apollo. Is that why you get sad when he looks at you? Claire traced a line in the wood with her finger. Sometimes. Are we stopping the wedding? We are telling the truth. Is that the same thing today it might be? Eli accepted the answer, though his eyes remained serious. Does Dom know I am going? Yes. Can I wear red shoes? Claire looked at the navy jacket hanging near the door. Yes. He nodded. Then it is still me. Across the city, the Mercer estate prepared for celebration. White roses climbed the stone columns. Gold chairs filled the private cathedral at the rear of the property. Crystal chandeliers reflected hundreds of candles, creating the illusion that the ceiling held stars. Men in dark suits arrived in black cars. Judges came through the east entrance. Business owners entered through the garden. Politicians greeted captains whose names never appeared in official records. The wedding represented peace. The Whitmore family controlled shipping contracts, political campaigns, and several judges across Louisiana. The Mercer organization controlled the ports no official document acknowledged. Evelyn had spent 3 years building the alliance. By late afternoon, she moved through the estate in silver silk, calm and radiant, speaking to guests, as though nothing in the city existed beyond her permission. Grant remained near the west corridor, checking his phone. The men he had sent to the pediatric clinic had stopped responding. The guard who provided the route had vanished into federal custody. He did not tell Evelyn. He believed he still had time to repair the failure. Upstairs, Lila Whitmore stood before a mirror while 2 women adjusted her veil. The gown was perfect. That was the problem. Every seam, purl, and fold had been selected to create the image of certainty. It left no room for hesitation. Lila dismissed the women. When the door closed, she removed a folded document from beneath the jewelry box. The court record showed no lawful divorce between Dominic and Claire. A second page contained payments from Grant's company to her family's former attorney. Lila had spent her life watching men call transactions traditions. She understood arranged loyalty. She understood marriages built for power. She had accepted that Dominic did not love her. She had not accepted becoming part of a crime. A soft knock sounded. Claire entered. For several seconds, the 2 women looked at each other. Lila wore white. Claire wore dark green. One had been prepared to inherit a name. The other had spent 6 years surviving it. Lila closed the door. You are Claire, yes. I expected to hate you. Claire's expression remained guarded. Do you know? Lila looked at her reflection. That makes this more difficult. I am not here to take anything from you. Lila turned. You are his wife, on paper. And outside it, Claire said nothing. Lila gave a small nod. That answer is more honest than anything I have heard in this house. She handed Claire the documents. My father's former attorney received money from Grant Mercer 3 weeks before your false divorce papers were created. My engagement to Dominic was being discussed before the world believed you had legally left him. Claire read the first page. You knew nothing. I knew the marriage was an alliance. I knew Dominic had loved someone before me. Evelyn said you terminated your pregnancy and disappeared. Lila's voice became colder. She said grief made him useful. Claire looked up. Useful to whom? To everyone who preferred him empty. The words carried no jealousy, only disgust. Lila removed one glove. I will walk down the aisle. Claire stared at her. Why? Because Evelyn must believe the ceremony is still hers. You do not owe Dominic that. This is not for Dominic. Lila placed the glove on the table. It is for the woman I will have to live with after today. Claire understood. Lila did not want to be rescued. She wanted to choose the moment she stepped away. At 6 o'clock, the cathedral bells rang. Dominic stood at the altar in a black tuxedo. He wore no flower. Mason waited near the side aisle. His men occupied the entrances, dressed like guests but positioned like walls. Evelyn sat in the front pew. Grant stood 2 rows behind her. Dominic looked toward them only once. His face gave them nothing. The quartet began. Lila appeared at the far end of the aisle with her father beside her. The guests rose. She moved slowly beneath the candles. Every step carried her closer to a future she had already rejected. Outside the rear doors, Claire knelt in front of Eli and straightened his collar. Apollo rested beneath his arm. "You stay beside me." "I know. If Mason asks you to go with him, you go. What is the word Blue Lantern?" Eli nodded. He looked at the cathedral doors. "Is Dom inside?" "Yes. Does he know the truth now?" Claire touched his cheek. "He knows part of it. What part does he not know?" Her throat tightened. "The part only you can decide." Eli studied her face but did not ask again. Inside, Lila reached the altar. Her father placed her hand near Dominic's. Dominic did not take it. The priest opened his book. "Dearly beloved, we gather here." The rear doors opened. The sound struck the stone walls and traveled through the cathedral. The guests turned. Claire stood in the entrance holding Eli's hand. Whispers began immediately. Her name moved from row to row. "Claire Mercer, she is alive. The child." Evelyn's face lost color before discipline restored it. Grant reached inside his jacket for his phone. Mason shook his head once. Grant slowly lowered his hand. Dominic looked at Claire. For a moment, the cathedral disappeared. He saw only the woman he had once waited for in a hospital room and the child he had mourned without ever holding. Eli saw him at the altar. His face brightened. "Dom." Claire tightened her grip. Eli stayed beside her. The priest looked toward Dominic. Mr. Mercer Dominic raised one hand. The room obeyed. "There will be no wedding today." A murmur moved through the guests. Evelyn stood. "Dominic, this is neither the time nor the place for private confusion." Dominic looked at her. "There is nothing private about what you did." Evelyn's smile remained in place. "Claire disappeared 6 years ago. Whatever story she has brought back can be discussed after the ceremony." Lila lifted her veil. "No." Evelyn turned. Lila stepped away from Dominic. "It will be discussed now." The first crack appeared in Evelyn's control. Dominic descended from the altar. He stopped several feet from Claire. He did not reach for her. "This is Claire Mercer," he said. The cathedral became still. "My lawful wife." Lila's father whispered something under his breath. Evelyn stepped into the aisle. The divorce was handled privately. The divorce was forged. Mason carried a locked case toward the front. Grant moved toward the side door. 2 men blocked him. Dominic continued. 6 years ago, I was told Claire had chosen to end our child's life. I was shown her signature. I heard her voice. I received a medical report and a declaration stating no child survived our marriage. He looked at Claire. Every piece was manufactured. A monitor near the altar came to life. Hannah Price appeared on the screen. Her hair was gray at the temples. Her voice shook when she began, but it strengthened with every sentence. She described Claire arriving at St. Catherine's under sedation. She described the living fetal heartbeat. She described the absence of a lawful medical order. She named Evelyn Mercer and Grant Mercer. Evelyn lifted her chin. "A frightened nurse can say anything after 6 years." Mason displayed the original fetal report. The time, date, and physician credentials matched the clinic archive. Then came the security recording of Evelyn entering the clinic. The payment records followed. Money had moved from Grant's shell company to the clinic director, the attending physician, and the employee who created the false consent form. Dominic played the edited recording first. "I will not raise our child in Dominic's world." Then he played the original. "I will not raise our child in a house where Evelyn controls every door. Dominic and I need to leave before she decides for us." Claire's younger voice filled the cathedral. Dominic stood completely still as the words ended. Evelyn's expression changed. Only slightly. But Claire saw fear. The false divorce papers appeared next to the court clerk's signed statement, confirming the case number had never belonged to them. Lila stepped forward. She held up her documents. "My family's attorney received payment from Grant before the false filing date. Negotiations for this marriage began while Claire was still legally Dominic's wife. Her father stared at her. Lila. She did not look at him. Evelyn's voice sharpened. You have no understanding of what was required to preserve these families. Lila removed her veil. You told me he was free. He was abandoned. No, Lila said. He was emptied. She placed the veil on an empty chair. Grant suddenly pushed past one of Mason's men. He made it 3 steps. Mason caught him and forced his arms behind his back. Grant looked toward Dominic. You are destroying everything your father built. Dominic's expression did not move. My father built a family. You turned it into a prison. Evelyn pointed toward Claire. She made you weak before the child was even born. Dominic looked at Eli. The boy stood close to Claire, holding Apollo against his chest. Dominic's voice lowered. You knew he lived. A whisper passed through the room. Evelyn said nothing. You knew my son was alive. He was a risk. Claire moved in front of Eli. Dominic took 1 step toward Evelyn. A risk to whom, to everything. The answer came too fast. Evelyn realized it only after the words were spoken. Dominic waited. She straightened. Claire would have taken you away from the family. She asked me to build a safer one. She would have made you choose. I should have chosen. Evelyn's composure fractured. That boy changes every account, every vote, every succession plan. You think love survives power? It does not. Power survives love. Dominic looked at her with terrible calm. He is not a succession plan. He is Mercer blood. He is a child. A wife can be replaced, Evelyn said. A bloodline cannot. The cathedral fell silent. Claire heard the faint movement of crystal above them. Dominic looked at the woman who had raised him, advised him, and built 6 years of grief around his obedience. You never protected this family, he said. You protected your place inside it. Evelyn looked around the cathedral for support. No one met her eyes. Mason's men took Grant through the side aisle. 2 federal agents entered through the rear doors. Evelyn stared at Dominic. You would hand your own family to the government. You stopped being my family when you tried to erase mine. The agents approached her. For the first time, Evelyn looked small, not weak, simply exposed. She passed Claire without speaking. Her gaze dropped toward Eli. Dominic stepped between them. Evelyn looked up at him. He said only 1 word. Never. The agents escorted her out. The cathedral remained silent after the doors closed. Dominic turned toward the guests. There is nothing left to celebrate. He looked at Lila. I am sorry. She met his gaze. Be sorry for what you ignored, not for what you finally faced. Then she looked at Claire. I will not blame you for surviving. Lila walked down the aisle alone. Her father followed several seconds later. The guests began leaving in quiet groups, carrying the story into every powerful room in New Orleans. Dominic returned to Claire and Eli. We are leaving. No announcement, no demand for forgiveness, no hand placed at Claire's back. They walked through the side garden beneath white roses Evelyn had selected for the wedding. The evening air was cool. Eli waited until the cathedral doors closed behind them. Then he looked up at Dominic. Why did you say I am your son? Dominic's eyes moved to Claire. She nodded. He lowered himself until he and Eli were at the same height. Because it is true. Eli looked at Claire. Did you know? Yes, sweetheart. Why did you not tell me? Claire crouched beside him. Because I was afraid. Of Dom, of the people around him. I did not know if he could keep you safe. Dominic did not defend himself. She was right to be afraid. Eli looked at him. Were you my father when you did not know me? Dominic's voice broke. I was your father before I knew your name. Eli held Apollo tighter. He studied Dominic with the same seriousness he had shown in the hallway at Harbor House. Then he asked the one question no evidence in the cathedral could answer. Are you still my friend? Dominic looked at Eli as though the question had reached a place no bullet ever had. The cathedral garden was quiet around them. White roses climbed the stone wall. Music had stopped inside, but faint voices still moved through the building as guests called drivers lawyers and people they trusted more than the truth. Claire remained crouched beside her son. Dominic took a slow breath. Only if you still want me to be. Eli studied him. The rules still count. All of them. No shouting at children. Never. No disappearing without saying goodbye. Dominic's eyes shifted for a moment. I will always tell you when I have to leave. And the smile rule. Dominic tried. The first smile was small and uncertain, almost hidden beneath the habit of control. Eli tilted his head. That one is sad. I am out of practice. You can try again. Dominic looked at his son. This time he let the expression reach his eyes. Eli nodded. Better. Then he stepped forward and placed both arms around Dominic's neck. You can be Papa too. Dominic froze. His hands lifted slowly before settling against Eli's back. Claire watched the strength leave his shoulders. He had stood in front of judges, armed men, rival families, and entire rooms prepared to betray him. Nothing had ever made Dominic Mercer look defenseless. A 6-year-old did it with one word. Papa. Dominic closed his eyes. His jaw tightened, but it was not enough to contain what moved through him. A tear crossed his cheek. Eli pulled back and looked at it. Are you hurt? Yes, where Dominic placed a hand over his chest. Here. Eli considered this. Do you need a doctor? Claire looked away before either of them could see her smile through the tears. Dominic shook his head. No, I think it is supposed to hurt. Eli looked toward Claire. Is that true? She wiped beneath one eye. Sometimes. Eli accepted the answer. He held Apollo out to Dominic. You can carry him. Dominic received the blue cardboard rocket with both hands. The gesture was simple, but Claire understood what Eli had given him. Apollo slept beside Eli, sat beside him at breakfast, came to doctor appointments, traveled in the car, watched the world from bedroom windows. Eli did not hand him to people he expected to disappear. Dominic examined the repaired nose. He has been through a lot. He keeps crashing. Why he goes high. Dominic looked at the uneven wings. Does he ever stop? No. Eli took Claire's hand and then looked at Dominic's empty one. Dominic did not reach for him. He waited. Eli slipped his fingers into Dominic's. The three of them walked through the garden together. At the iron gate, Mason stood beside a black car. His gaze moved to Dominic holding Apollo, then to Eli's hand inside Dominic's. Mason said nothing. He opened the rear door. Claire stopped. Where are we going? The safe house, Dominic said. Unless you want somewhere else. The answer surprised her. Only hours earlier, Dominic would have decided the route before asking. Claire looked toward the cathedral. Cars were leaving through the main drive. News would spread before midnight. Evelyn and Grant had lost control of the room, but Claire knew people like them did not become harmless simply because they were exposed. The safe house, she said. Dominic nodded. Claire and Eli entered the car. Dominic sat across from them. Mason took the front seat. As the city lights moved across the windows, Eli asked questions. Was the lady in the silver dress your mom? Dominic looked at Claire before answering. She raised me after my mother died. Was she always bad? No. Claire watched him. Dominic continued. People are rarely only one thing. She took care of me when I was young. Then she decided taking care of me meant controlling every choice I made. Eli thought about this. Why did she not like me? She did not know you. She tried to take me. Dominic's voice grew quieter. She was afraid of what you changed. What did I change me? Eli looked pleased by the answer. Then he frowned. Is that why everybody stared? They were learning something. Adults stare a lot when they are confused. Mason made a sound that might have been agreement. Eli turned toward him. Do you have children? Mason looked over his shoulder. No. Do you want some? Mason glanced at Dominic. I have enough difficult people in my life. Eli smiled. You mean him? Dominic looked out the window. Claire laughed. It escaped before she could stop it. The sound filled the car. Dominic turned toward her. For a second, his expression lost every layer of command. Claire had forgotten how he looked when surprise softened him. She looked away. The safe house appeared beyond the cypress trees shortly after midnight. Eli had fallen asleep against Claire's side. His red shoes rested against the seat. One hand remained curled around the sleeve of Dominic's jacket. Dominic looked down at the small fingers. I can carry him. Claire hesitated. 6 years of instinct told her to protect every sleeping moment. Every fever, every frightened awakening, every time Eli had fallen asleep in a car, she had been the one to lift him. She looked at Dominic. Do not wake him. I will not. Dominic stepped from the car and leaned inside. He lifted Eli carefully. The boy stirred and pressed his face against Dominic's shoulder. "Papa, I am here." Eli relaxed again. Claire followed them into the house. Dominic carried him upstairs. He stopped outside the bedroom and waited. Claire noticed. Her first rule: no one entered Eli's room without permission. She opened the door. Dominic crossed to the bed and lowered Eli onto the mattress. He removed the red sneakers and placed them side by side near the wall. Eli opened his eyes. Apollo. Dominic held up the rocket. "Right here. Do not leave him on the floor. I will put him beside you. He does not like dark corners." Dominic set Apollo near the pillow. Eli's eyes began to close. "Are you leaving?" "Not tonight." "Promise?" "Yes." Eli lifted one finger without opening his eyes. "Bad promise." Dominic leaned closer. "What makes it bad? You have to say what you mean." Dominic looked at Claire. She stood in the doorway, arms folded loosely across herself. He turned back to Eli. "I will be downstairs. I will tell you before I leave the house." Eli nodded. "Good." Within moments, he was asleep. Dominic remained beside the bed. Claire watched him count each breath. She knew the habit. She had done the same when Eli was born too early, and the nurses warned that his breathing might stop. Dominic reached toward the boy's hair, then paused. Claire said, "You can touch him." His hand settled gently against Eli's curls. "He looks like you when he sleeps." Claire leaned against the doorframe. "He looks like you when he is angry." Dominic almost smiled. "Then he is unfortunate. He has your chin, my mother's. I remember." The room became still. There had once been a time when Claire knew every family story. She knew which recipes Dominic's mother had taught him, which songs his brother played too loudly, which scars belonged to accidents and which did not. That knowledge had not disappeared. It had simply become painful to carry. Dominic stood. They left the room and closed the door. Downstairs, Mason waited near the fireplace. "They have Evelyn in federal custody," he said. "Grant is being questioned separately." Dominic's expression hardened. "What charges? Attempted murder, medical fraud, conspiracy, kidnapping, falsified court records, and obstruction. More will follow." "What about the clinic? Federal agents entered the archive facility an hour ago. Hannah's records matched the originals they recovered." Claire moved closer. "Is Hannah safe?" "Yes, she has protection, and the doctor who signed the false procedure still alive. He crossed into Mississippi this afternoon. They found him before he reached Tennessee." Dominic looked toward the dark windows. "Who else inside my organization helped them?" "We have 4 names, maybe more. Remove their access, freeze every account connected to Grant." Mason nodded. Dominic added, "No private punishment." Mason studied him. "You are certain?" Claire looked at Dominic. He said everything goes through the courts." Mason's eyes moved toward the stairs. "That will surprise people. Let them be surprised." Mason gathered the folders. Before leaving, he stopped beside Claire. "You should know something." She waited. When Dominic learned about Eli, he had access to school records, medical records, and every private laboratory in the state. Dominic's expression changed. "Mason." Mason ignored him. "He did not order a secret test. He told me no one touched the boy's name, blood, or belongings without your consent." Claire looked at Dominic. He did not defend himself or seek credit. Mason continued. "The test shown today was the one you approved after the clinic attack. Nothing else was done." Claire nodded. "Thank you for telling me." Mason left. The front door closed. Dominic remained near the fireplace. Claire poured water into a glass. Her hands were beginning to shake now that the danger had quieted. Dominic noticed. "Sit down." "I am fine." "No, you are not." She looked at him. The old Dominic would have taken the glass from her. He would have guided her into a chair and called it care. This Dominic stopped several feet away. "You do not have to be fine," he said. Claire set the glass on the counter. "Neither do you." He looked toward the stairs. "I do not know what I am. A father." The word changed his breathing. Claire crossed the room and opened the porch door. Night air entered the house. She stepped outside. Dominic followed after a moment. The bayou stretched beyond the railing like black glass. Frogs called from the reeds. Spanish moss moved softly in the trees. Claire folded her arms. "Do you still love me?" Dominic did not hesitate. "Yes." She closed her eyes. The answer would have once been everything she wanted. Now it was only the beginning of a harder conversation. I still love you too. Dominic gripped the porch railing. Claire looked at the water. That was the worst part. What was running from someone I still loved? His voice became rough. I hated you because it was easier than what admitting I had failed you. Claire turned toward him. You did not arrange the clinic. No. You did not know Eli was alive. No. You were lied to. Yes. Then what do you think you failed? Dominic looked at her. I built a life where Evelyn could speak in my name and be believed. Claire said nothing. I allowed the people around me to become more powerful than the truth between us. You were afraid of my house. You told me. I kept saying I could control it. You thought you could. I was wrong. The admission did not repair anything. It did create space for honesty. Claire rested her hands on the railing. I cannot move back to the estate. I will not ask you to. I cannot share a room with you because a court says we are married. I know. I cannot let Eli become a symbol for your family. He will not. They will call him an heir. Then I will teach them his name. They will try to shape him. Dominic's expression sharpened. They will fail. Claire looked at him. He softened his tone. Not because I threaten them, because he will grow up knowing he has a choice. She studied his face. What if he wants nothing to do with your world? Then he will have nothing to do with it. What if he wants your name? Then it will be his. What if he keeps Dawson? Then that will be his too. Claire looked toward the house. Love is not enough. I know, he needs stability, counseling, a school where he is not watched because of you, a life that does not depend on armed men. I will provide whatever he needs. No. Dominic became still. Claire faced him fully. You will not provide everything. We will decide together. You will not solve his life with money. Dominic nodded. We will decide together. I want separate homes. His jaw tightened, but he said, All right, I want my own lawyer. You should have one. I want every security arrangement explained to me. Yes. I want the right to say no. Yes. And if I decide I cannot return to this marriage, you will accept it. The silence lasted longer this time. Pain moved across Dominic's face, but he did not retreat into command. I will accept it. Claire looked away. She had expected resistance. Part of her had needed it. Anger would have been familiar. It would have allowed her to build the wall again. Dominic stepped closer, but not close enough to touch her. I want you back, he said. I will not pretend otherwise. Claire's throat tightened. But wanting you does not give me a claim on you. The night seemed to hold still around them. Claire whispered, You are learning. I am late. Yes, I know. A small laugh escaped her. It surprised them both. Dominic looked at her as though the sound had become something fragile in his hands. Claire did not apologize for it. The legal consequences began the next morning. By 8, every television station in Louisiana carried footage of federal agents entering St. Catherine's archive facility. By 10, Evelyn Mercer's name appeared beside words she had spent a lifetime keeping away from it. Conspiracy, attempted murder, fraud, kidnapping. Grant's shell companies were frozen before noon. Several clinic employees came forward by evening. One nurse remembered being told to alter a medication record. A records clerk admitted that Grant paid her to remove Claire's admission file. A driver identified the garage where Claire's damaged car had been stored before it was destroyed. Hannah Price gave a complete statement from a protected location. Claire listened to part of it beside Dominic in the safe house kitchen. Hannah described the way Claire had held her stomach while running through the laundry corridor. She described hearing Grant order the staff to find her before Dominic returned. She described Evelyn saying the child must never be allowed to change the balance of the family. Claire turned off the recording. That is enough. Dominic reached toward her, then stopped. Claire looked at his hand. This time she placed her fingers inside it. Only for a moment. Then she let go. 2 weeks later, Claire met with her own attorney in a quiet office near City Park. The forged divorce was formally invalidated. The attorney explained that Claire and Dominic remained legally married, but that she had every right to file for divorce, legal separation, or a private marital agreement. Dominic attended only after Claire invited him. He sat across from her at the conference table. When the attorney asked whether he intended to contest any decision Claire made regarding the marriage, Dominic answered no. When the attorney asked about Eli's custody, Dominic presented the signed agreement. Claire's lawyer reviewed it carefully. You understand this gives Mrs. Mercer primary authority while the family court reviews the case? Yes. You are voluntarily limiting your own access. I am giving her proof that I will not take him. Claire watched his face. He did not look defeated. He looked certain. After the meeting, they stood beneath the oak trees outside. Dominic's car waited at the curb. Claire's small sedan was parked half a block away. You do not have to keep living above the tailor shop, he said. Claire's expression cooled. Dominic corrected himself. I am not telling you to move. What are you saying? The address is known. I found an apartment near Harbor House. 2 exits, secure entrance. No Mercer ownership. You found it. Mason found it. You decide whether to see it. Claire looked at him. Who pays you can. The answer surprised her. Dominic added, There is a trust for Eli. You control it. It does not require you to use my money. Claire crossed her arms. You created a trust for school medical care and whatever future he chooses. Not the organization, no. Not succession, no. What happens if your captains call him the future of the Mercer family? Dominic's eyes hardened. They already tried. What did you say his future belongs to him? Claire believed him. That frightened her less than before. She agreed to see the apartment. A week later, she and Eli moved into it. The building was 3 blocks from Harbor House. The windows faced a courtyard filled with magnolia trees. The front entrance required 2 keys. The rear stairs led to a public street. Claire checked every lock. Then she unpacked the emergency bag she had carried for 6 years. She placed Eli's clothes in the dresser. She put the medicine in the bathroom cabinet. She hung framed drawings on the walls. At the bottom of one box, she found a photograph of herself and Dominic taken before the pregnancy. They stood on a balcony during a summer storm. Dominic's hand rested at her waist. Claire was laughing at something outside the frame. She held the photograph for a long time. Then she placed it inside a drawer. She did not throw it away. Dominic began visiting 3 afternoons each week. The first visit lasted 1 hour. He arrived 10 minutes early and waited outside until Claire opened the door. Eli ran toward him. Papa. Dominic still paused every time he heard it. He brought no expensive gifts. Claire had made that rule after he arrived with a custom-built telescope that cost more than her first car. Eli had loved it. Claire had not. Dominic returned the telescope. The next visit he brought a library book about rockets. Eli approved. They read on the floor while Claire worked at the kitchen table. Dominic stumbled over the names of planets because Eli interrupted every paragraph with questions. Could people live on Mars possibly? Would they have pizza? They would find a way. Would you come with me? Dominic looked at him. If you asked. What about Mom? Dominic's gaze moved toward Claire. She would decide for herself. Eli nodded. That is the right answer. Dominic learned the inhaler schedule. He learned that Eli hated peas, but tolerated green beans. He learned that bedtime required 1 story, 1 glass of water, and exactly 3 checks beneath the bed for creatures Eli did not believe in, but preferred to monitor. He learned not to answer his phone at the table. The first time it rang during dinner, Dominic stepped away. Eli watched him. Are you leaving, No? You moved toward the door. Dominic looked at the phone. Then he switched it off and placed it on the counter. I am staying. Eli smiled. Dominic sat down again. On another afternoon, Dominic was called to deal with a threat at the port. He arrived at Claire's apartment early. Eli sat at the table building a new launch ramp. Dominic crouched beside him. I have to leave. Eli's face changed. When are you coming back tomorrow at 4? Exactly, yes. What if serious people stop you? I will call. What if you cannot call? Mason will. Eli held out his hand. Promise correctly. Dominic placed his palm against Eli's. I will return tomorrow at 4. If I cannot, I will make sure you know why before 4. Eli nodded. Dominic returned the next day at 3:52. Eli pretended not to have watched the clock. Claire saw him smiling from the window before Dominic reached the door. The changes inside Dominic's organization moved more slowly. Grant's loyalists were removed from their positions. Accounts connected to violence were placed under investigation. Legitimate businesses received independent managers. Several captains objected. One of them visited Dominic's office and referred to Eli as the new Mercer heir. Dominic stood behind his desk. His name is Eli Dawson. The captain smiled carefully. For now? Dominic's expression became still. For as long as he chooses. He carries Mercer blood. He carries no obligation. The man understood the warning. He never used the word heir again. Lila Whitmore left New Orleans for Washington. Before leaving, she sent Claire a short letter. There was no apology for something she had not done, no request for friendship, only a statement that her family had terminated every agreement connected to Grant and Evelyn. At the bottom, she wrote, "You were right to return. I was right to leave." Claire kept the letter. Hannah entered federal protection after 3 former clinic patients came forward with similar stories of coercion and falsified consent. The case became larger than the Mercer family. Claire agreed to testify privately. Dominic did not attend the first interview. He waited outside because Claire asked him to. When she emerged 2 hours later, her hands were cold. Dominic stood from the bench. "Do you want me near you?" Claire looked at him. "Yes." He opened his arms. She stepped into them. The embrace was not romantic. It was not forgiveness. It was a place to stand after returning to the worst night of her life. Dominic held her without tightening his grip. When Claire stepped back, he let her go. 1 month after the wedding, they returned to Harbor House. Children filled the hallway with paint paper and noise. Parents looked up when Dominic entered. Some recognized him. Others recognized Claire from the news. Dominic had no visible entourage. Mason's people remained outside and across the street. Claire noticed every one of them. She also noticed Dominic had listened when she asked for distance. Eli ran ahead carrying Apollo. The rocket had changed. One wing was silver. The nose was blue. 3 small figures had been drawn beside the window. A woman, a boy, a tall man with dark hair. Dominic saw the drawing. He said nothing. Eli stopped halfway down the hallway and turned. "Papa." Dominic froze. The word still entered him like light through a locked room. Eli pointed at his face. "Smile rule." Dominic lowered himself to one knee. The same hallway, the same paint-stained floor, the same child. But nothing between them was hidden now. Dominic smiled. Eli examined the result. Better, only better, still a little criminal. Claire laughed. The sound echoed against the walls. Dominic looked at her. Not as the head of the Mercer family, not as a husband expecting to be restored, only as the man who had once lost her, and now understood that finding her did not mean owning the road ahead. Ms. Rivera opened the studio doors. "Eli, we are ready for the launch." Children gathered near the far wall. A paper target shaped like the moon hung from the ceiling. Eli carried Apollo to the marked line on the floor. He looked back. "Mom?" Claire joined him. "Papa." Dominic stood beside her. Eli handed them each one wing. "You both have to help." Dominic glanced at Claire. She smiled faintly. "On 3, Eli said." They lowered the rocket together. 1. Dominic's hand brushed Claire's. 2. She did not move away. 3. They released Apollo. The blue rocket rose unevenly. It struck a hanging paper star, dipped toward the floor, then caught a current from the open window. For several seconds it flew. The children cheered. Eli ran after it. Apollo landed at Dominic's feet. He picked it up. One wing had loosened. Eli returned, breathing hard. "Can you fix it?" Dominic examined the damage. "Yes." Claire stood beside him. Dominic looked at her. He held out his free hand. He did not pull. He did not ask whether she had forgiven him. He did not remind her that the law still called them husband and wife. He simply waited. For 6 years, Claire had survived by leaving first. She had learned to read headlights through curtains. She had learned to sleep near packed bags. She had learned that love could become a trap when powerful people spoke in its name. Staying had once meant danger. Now staying could mean choosing the next moment without surrendering the one after it. Claire placed her hand in his. Dominic's fingers closed gently around hers. Eli looked back from the studio doors. "Are you coming?" Claire answered. "Yes." Dominic looked at their son. "We are coming." They walked into the art room together. No priest waited. No families watched. No one announced a restored marriage or demanded a promise for the future. There were only children paint sunlight and a cardboard rocket that refused to remain broken. Dominic had once believed fatherhood was blood legacy and a name powerful men passed down. Eli taught him differently. A father was the man who lowered himself so a child never had to fear looking up. A father was the man who explained when he had to leave and returned when he said he would. A father was the man who protected without turning love into a cage. Papa was not a title Dominic inherited. It was a promise. And as Eli placed Apollo between them and asked for more tape, Dominic understood that he would spend the rest of his life learning how to keep it.